Let's get more on the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix as Sergio Perez won his first race of the season in Jeddah.
Yeah, so for more on this, let's cross live now to Ted Kravitz. Ted, hi, good to see you. Look, let's start with the incident involving Fernando Alonso, shall we? Because first he was on the podium, then he wasn't, then he was. What did you make of it all?
Morning, yes, I know. Formula One loves its abbreviations, doesn't it? So we had the latest two, which were decisions were made in a rock, and then they were subject to decisions made in a sack. So the rock was the FIA's version of the VAR room, effectively. It's a remote operations center. It's in Geneva, some 3,000 miles or so away from Saudi Arabia. And they'd seen something earlier on that Fernando Alonso hadn't served his penalty correctly. He got a penalty, fair enough. But then when you serve your penalty, you're not allowed to do any work on the car. And the remote operations center had seen whether this guy at the back holding the rear jack had actually touched the back of the car before the 5-second penalty was served. At the time, the Rock had decided that there was no real hard place to go to with Aston Martin, that he hadn't touched the car, and even if he had, it was okay. But then later on, another team that had something to gain, the rumor is Mercedes, but that's unconfirmed, complained, and they said, I think you need to take a further look at this, because out of a decision in the SAC, the Sporting Advisory Committee had said that maybe you can't touch the car with a real jack. At the end, Aston Martin said, no, actually, the SAC, the Sporting Advisory Committee, had never said that you can't touch the car with the jack. It's just that you couldn't do any sort of meaningful work on it. And there'd been lots of other instances where other teams had touched the car with the jack. So that, in the end, meant that Alonso was confirmed in his third place. I hope between the Rock and the SAC, I haven't confused you there.
OMG.
Yeah, you might have done a little bit. Was it the right outcome ultimately?
That's a difficult question, because if you're, the previous race, Esteban Ocon, a team member, had touched the car within the 5-second penalty period, and he had been given a 10-second penalty for the team member doing that. Nothing to do with the driver. It was a team mess up. So there is a little bit of inconsistency, but Aston Martin were shown. They were able to show that the minutes of this Sporting Advisory Committee had said that, it doesn't count if you attach a jack. So in the sporting way, it's a little thing. It didn't affect the outcome in a sporting sense. Alonso didn't gain any time by a team member attaching a jack to the back of his car. So I think it was, on balance, in a sporting way, the right thing to do to confirm his third place finish.
Ted, just coming on to Lewis Hamilton, he says that Red Bull is the fastest car in his F1 time. Is it?
Well, A, it is, he's right, and B, what Hamilton's referring to is the ease at which Max Verstappen was able to pass him on the straight the moment he opened his rear wing flap. So we have this thing called the drag reduction system. And that means that on the straight, if a car is behind, they can open their rear wing, which normally slows the car down, having a rear wing. If you put your hand out of your car in a motorway, you can feel the air pressure. The rear wing goes like that, opens itself up, and the airflow goes through, and it gives the car a straight line speed boost, the one car behind it. What Lewis is saying is that he's never seen a car gain quite so much speed by opening its drag reduction system rear wing flap. And he doesn't understand how that's possible. Now, listen, this is one of those things. There's lots of technical intrigue in Formula One. Lots of people will be looking at the Red Bull and saying, how are they able to gain nearly 20 miles an hour advantage on the straight from anybody else? Are they doing something with that rear wing that not only stalls out the rear wing, of course, but also stalls out the floor or other aerodynamics around the car? So that'll be, I'm sure, the latest round of technical intrigue in Formula One when we get to the next race in Australia.
Yeah, and Ted, just very quickly, we've got about 10 seconds. Sergio Perez, can he make this Drivers' Championship competitive?
He can make it competitive, but ultimately Red Bull is fully behind Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen's dad, Jos Verstappen, was disappointed that the Red Bull team weren't allowing the drivers to race at the end of the race. But yeah, Max Verstappen is Red Bull's focus for the championship, no question about it.
Ted, great to speak to you. Appreciate it. Thank you.